The Nissan Leaf gets a new generation here for the 2026 model year, and it gets over 300 miles of range now. It gets this very modern look to it, a more crossover look, and a whole bunch of other nice improvements. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road and live with it for a week, as well as talking about the kind of efficiency you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And so as far as the 2026 Leaf, well, it's a really cool look. I also love this sea breeze blue pearl color. It's a really fun color that really pops, and it's just great to see colors like this that are offered. Now, we're standing next to the Platinum version here, which does start at about $41,000, but including destination, these start at just about $31,500. So about $10,000 less for that lowest one, and you get some really nice stuff here in this top one. I'll talk about that once we head on to the inside. But on the outside here, the exclusive things you will see for the Platinum version are that you have that light bar and the illuminated Nissan logo there in the middle, but you still get these great LED headlights as standard, which are really nice that they're like projector beams. It's a little bit more upscale looking than the average reflectors that you have in a lot of LED equipped headlights these days. And just a very streamlined front end. They really focused on trying to maximize the aerodynamic efficiency. And so the aero on this car has been dropped by several points compared to what you got on the prior generation Leaf, and that's what partially helps with the improved range. Coming down to the sides, this one has the range killer wheels. These 19s look very cool, but that drops this one to about 259 miles of range versus over 300 to 303 you can get, I believe, with the lower wheels on the base trim. But these wheels, again, look very cool. Another interesting thing is you do have charge ports on both front fenders. As we come down to the sides here, you'll see that on the passenger side here, that's where you'll find your DC fast charging port, and it is an NACS port, but that is only for fast charging. So if you are, coming out of a Tesla household, for example, you're going to have to get a CCS adapter, because on the driver's side, that's where you will find your regular AC charging, and that is a J1772 normal traditional plug there. So, it's interesting that this NACS on the passenger side can't do slow charging, it only does fast charging. I'm sure there's a technical reason as to why, but I really hope they work through that so that you can have the flexibility of both. I think that would be fantastic. But anyway, also on the sides here, you'll see other things they did to maximize range. You have, again, a very smoothed over body, some smaller mirrors, and you also have these door handles that retract, and on the back doors, they're built into the rear C-pillar there, which is an interesting and very cool and sporty touch. You also even have roof rails here on this, which actually gives it a little bit of a higher profile. But even with those roof rails, this vehicle is about 0.2 inches lower than the last generation Leaf, believe it or not. And standing next to this, I don't believe the numbers. I swear the old Leaf felt smaller, but this is actually 3 inches shorter as well as far as the length goes on a 0.4 inch shorter wheelbase. Now it is almost an inch wider, so you're going to get a little bit of extra size there, but otherwise, in other metrics, this is smaller. Again, it's amazing what bodywork does and proportions, because it definitely looks bigger in person than the old one, in my opinion. But anyway, also coming out to the back there, you will see a very sportback kind of shape. It's not quite as boxy as some of the other crossovers in this segment. So this is definitely on the sporty side, and still kind of, again, bridging the gap of, is it a hatchback? Is it an SUV? Is it a lifted sedan? You could kind of interpret it as all three depending on how you look at it. And another unique touch here for the Platinum version is that's the only one that gets those extra little taillight accents there in that black portion. Otherwise, you just have the outside little triple vertical lights, which kind of remind me of the Mustang slightly, but it's a very cool, taillight array there. I do wish we had a rear wiper. I know this is a low-cost vehicle, so I can live without it, but that'd be a nice thing to even offer as an option potentially in the future. The interior of the 2026 Leaf is very cool. It's very high tech. It's also very fun. I love the cloth, and I love here, you can get this both on the SV and on the Platinum here, where you have this like metallic purplish blue leatherette with the cream combo, and it's a very fun look, and I love that you have it on the dash there with the piping. But this fabric, I'm really appreciating fabric in interiors these days, especially as an accent piece. It looks really nice and actually feels pretty premium. Now, as far as the basics here, so first off, sitting down in these seats, you have what are called tailor fit seats. And in addition to, you know, just having the fun colors, they're also pretty soft and comfortable. I'm surprised. I think this is the first Nissan where you don't have zero gravity seats, which I actually really love. Nissan's been going with those for a long time, where they really help with long-term fatigue so that they're really comfortable. These seats, though, are also nice and comfortable. They're pretty soft, and I love that they're perforated so they won't get too hot in the summertime, because you don't have ventilated seats. These are only heated seats here. That's something you get here on Platinum and on the SV trim. But, you know, all the accents and just the little, you know, design and the perforations and everything, it's just a very cool seat. It also has, here in the Platinum, these Bose headrest speakers as part of this Personal Plus stereo, they call it, with 10 speakers total, and they really do help with the immersion. The Bose stereo is really fantastic and one of the best stereos in especially the lower end EV segment for sure. And Nissan does this also in the Kicks and I think one or two other vehicles, and I love the surround effect you get from these headrest speakers. It's really cool, and yeah, I just love that. Now, if you don't go for the Bose system in the Platinum here, the SV trim gives you 6 speakers. You go down to 4 speakers in the regular S Plus trim. Now, moving on to the steering wheel here, we have a really nice wheel that is also a heated steering wheel, and has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and has some buttons here, and also these little the scroller wheel and the little notch here on the left hand side. This is mostly good. Now, you do have little bumps for some of these touchpads where otherwise you'd have to look down, since it's all still capacitive touch for a lot of that, but the notches certainly help a little bit. I still would prefer regular buttons myself, but this works, you know, mostly fine, and the scroller wheel does feel really nice to use. You also do have regen paddles here on the back of the wheel, which is a nice touch. I'll talk more about when we hit the road. And then moving on to the gauges here. So that's part of this double screen array that you have here in these. And these 14.3-inch screens are in this Platinum and also in the SV trim. On the lowest S Plus trim, you'll go down to 12.3-inch screens for both of these, which will also be completely fine, and I'll talk more about the differences here in a second. But as far as the gauge cluster, they'll be the same graphics and everything, just this little bit of a smaller display there. But for the gauges here, it's a really nice display. It's similar to any other Nissan you've seen in the past couple of years with a fully digital cluster, and that means that, you know, you have all your familiar info there in the middle to scroll through. But it is nice that, for example, if you do run wireless Apple CarPlay here, you can have Apple Maps there in the middle, which is a great little touch there, and lots of great info there. And you also can change the display to have the gauges go away if you'd like, so that you can just have, you know, a larger space for the other info that you want to have in the middle there, or just a calmer view if you're a little overwhelmed by all the gauges. And I will say that the 2 dials, they're certainly nice to have, and I'm a traditionalist that likes that stuff, but, you know, having the power meter have percentages that so closely mirrors the speedometer with the numbers, the first couple of times I drove this vehicle, I was like looking over at the one on the left, and I'm like, oh wait, that's not the speedometer, that's on the right. And just a little bit of a funny little switch there. But otherwise, yeah, really nice gauges. You also have a head-up display here in the Platinum, which is a nice feature for sure. It just shows you your speed, and will show you directions if you're navigating. But that's about it. Certainly not a must-have feature in my opinion, but you know, a nice thing to include, I suppose. Now, coming over to the middle of the dashboard here, that's where you'll see the other 14.3-inch screen, or again, 12.3-inch screen. And both screens are going to run the same infotainment software. The only difference is that the 12.3-inch screen doesn't get Google built in. So the only real perks of the Google built-in is you do have Google Maps, which is certainly nice. It's better than Nissan's regular navigation maps they usually use. And the one perk for the EVs here in particular is that it can do a battery preconditioning automatically. So if you're navigating and on a road trip and you have your charge stops, plugged into the navigation there, it will see you're approaching it and pre-warm the battery so that you can have the peak charge rate more reliably. That's certainly nice to have, but that's part of the connected services, which after the first year is $17 a month. Maybe you can just subscribe for 1 month if you are doing a road trip once a year, and then that's it or something, but just know that will cost you. So personally, not a big deal to lose the Google thing if you go for the base screen. You will also have the Google Play Store, so you can download apps to run natively if you want, but because this has wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto as standard, you can just avoid the hassle of downloading everything into the screen and instead just connect your phone and have all the apps from your phone automatically mirrored, automatically logged in, and working flawlessly. And Apple CarPlay did work flawlessly, by the way, all week, connected immediately, had no reliability issues with that at all, and very happy about all of that. Otherwise, you know, the Nissan infotainment software is pretty good. It's not the fastest all the time, but you know, it's fine, you know, 95% of the time, I'd say. You'll see you do also have the dedicated EV pages, which is great, and you know, a bunch of customization as far as, you know, charge scheduling. You can also, you know, change the limit for how fast it charges. There's a whole bunch of things you can customize in there, and it's really nice that you have all those extra features for sure. And you will also see you have a climate screen, so you can go and like turn on your heated steering wheel in the screen if you don't want to press the button here on your left-hand side or whatever. Same thing for heated seats and stuff. But the nice thing is you do have this row of, you know, capacitive touch, but still just off-screen buttons. If you would like to just, you know, get to stuff a little bit simpler that way, you can certainly do that. So it's nice to give you the choice of either or. The only other little thing I will say that might actually be fixed with the smaller screen is this 14.3-inch screen is a little bit of a reach to hit the upper right corner. Now, this is a growing trend with a lot of these large displays, but in this particular way, the screen is kind of really set back into the dash there. It's nicely integrated, I'll say, but it just means every once in a while I did have to actually lean forward to reach something on the screen there, but not a big deal. Now, also coming down, you'll see you have a dedicated volume knob, nice and big, and I love that we have that, and also little tune buttons there, and also a quick access camera button, which I love, which will bring up the 360 camera. It's a lower res 360, you know, camera. Some others these days have higher res cameras, but it gives you a view of what is around you, and that's the important thing, even if it's not in, you know, great high resolution. And certainly a nice touch to have, although in a small car like this, you know, probably overkill, but you know, nice nonetheless. Coming down, you'll see it's kind of nice and open here, where you don't have any kind of console here, and so it just goes down to this flat floor, where you will see down at the base there, you do have a regular power outlet still, if you can reach it. It's definitely a ways down there. Otherwise, you do also have this little drop-down drawer, I guess you can call it. You do still also have a regular glove box, so, you know, great to have kind of a double glove box situation almost here. And other storage spaces here, you will see you have this nice large cup holder area with a little slot in front of it where you could put a phone or something like that, the key maybe. And you also do have two USB-C jacks there. And then you also do have a Qi wireless charging pad here that comes on the SV and on the Platinum here. And it's a pretty good wireless charging pad. It's rubberized. Now, it doesn't have any brackets, but it is angled downward, so it should hold your phone in pretty well. And I just love the positioning of it, that it's like right by your hand there, so if you need it, it's, you know, quick, easy access. But otherwise, it's just easy to drop your phone in there and, you know, have it, you know, do the charging for you there. And so nice to have that for sure. And when you open that up, you also will see you have a fairly small little cubby there. You know, I can just barely fit my sunglasses case in there, but it does fit. And so, you know, pretty good as far as that goes, I'd say, again, in a combination with all the other storage spaces you have in here. And the center armrest does have some nice padding to it, so that's certainly appreciated. And also in the doors here, you'll find a nice, pretty large pocket with a bottle holder as well. And the last thing before we move on to the back seat is that you have an electrochromic glass roof here in the Platinums, which is a really cool touch and a very high-end touch. There's only a few vehicles that have electrochromic glass roofs these days, and most of them are, I think all of them actually, are way more expensive than this. So the cool feature with that is that you can dim it and it'll kind of frost itself there. And so it does that automatically when you park, so it keeps out some of the heat. But then whenever, you know, you're driving, if you want to have it opened up, you just, you know, can digitally kind of slide that back, which is cool. It even has a little Nissan Leaf logo there, but a really nice touch for sure. And you know, not something you must have, you know, but certainly great, especially for those backseat occupants. And moving on to the back seat here in the Leaf, that is where you do notice the size not being the best. I think Nissan actually claims that you do have better legroom than the old Leaf, but it is pretty tight. So I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I have maybe an inch of legroom to spare. And that's a little disappointing. I was hoping we were gonna have spacing that was closer to like the Nissan Kicks, which is actually pretty good and spacious these days. In my opinion, this is actually a little bit tighter. Now, headroom is pretty okay, you know, not too bad even with the sloping roofline, but, you know, that's because I think, you know, primarily we don't have as much of a drop with the height as we do with, you know, the shortening of this car. The other thing too is that my feet can't really slide under the seat too much, that Also limits comfort back there a little bit. So I wouldn't put adults back there all the time, but it certainly works in a pinch, you know, and nice to have. But I would like to see, you know, a slightly larger Leaf, an extended wheelbase version, something like that maybe, especially since now the Nissan Aria, the bigger one, is no more after the 2025 model year. So I do wish they had something a little bit bigger back there. So maybe we'll get that in the future, we'll see. But anyway, when you're back there, also looking forward, you will see that you do have the rear air vents here in the Platinum and in the SV trim. You don't get those in the base trim, but you do also see 2 USB-C jacks. And in the Platinum here, you also do get heated rear seats, which is a very bougie feature, especially, again, considering not having a ton of space back there. But nice to have that. And you also see a regular 110 volt, you know, kind of plug there. And there's that one. There's also one in the cargo area. And I believe those are only on the Platinum trim as well, but this car does have vehicle to load, so you can actually run some high-powered appliances through those plugs if you'd like. And we do have our car seat in the back, and it does fit. And I will say that because of the way the front dashboard is designed, my wife was able to sit here, and, you know, I mean, she didn't have a ton of space, but her knees weren't jammed into the dashboard. And my 4-year-old daughter, who's you know, 95th percentile or whatever, she actually didn't complain and was totally fine back there. So if you're looking at this as a family vehicle, you know, for adults maybe not great in the back, but for kids, even kids in car seats, it does actually work quite well. There's also a full down center armrest back there too. And it's also worth noting that, you know, the full leatherette is only here in the Platinum. If you go for the SV trim, you'll get leatherette up front, but I guess you get cloth in the back still, which is an interesting touch. And then of course it's all cloth for the S Plus trim. But anyway, moving on to the cargo space here in the Leaf. It's not a ton of space, but I'd say it's a little bit of an improvement probably over the old Leaf. So you see, you know, a little bit of a longer space there, I think, than before, and a pretty nice and wide space. I like those deep cutouts there on both sides. And it's also this dividing kind of floor thing where you can pull out that front part there and you get access to a deeper area there. And so you could really, you know, have a lot more space in there if you'd like by just removing that part if you want or whatever. But you'll see that the forward part there is kind of concealing a bump there. I'm not sure if that's a battery kind of bump or what. For whatever reason, you know, that's kind of impeding on having a nice, long, flat, deep floor. So kind of an interesting setup there, but should work okay. And also beneath even that lower floor, you will find another little cutout there for your charge cable, for example. And also the fix-a-flat kit you have there. And so, you know, also this being a sloped roofline, again, it's not going to have as much stacking ability maybe as the old Leaf, and as, you know, good as you will find in maybe some of the other smaller, you know, hatchback kind of competitors. But again, should be fine for, you know, most people, a few, you know, luggage bags, things like that. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Leaf here just has the usual Nissan key, which is a newer key here in the past couple of years. And it's very nice. It has a metal trim ring around it there, and not too thick or anything. I actually really like this key. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here on all of these. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the power button here, and turns right on there. There we go. And it usually gives you those Nissan nice chimes when you boot it up as well. All right, so setting off here in the 2026 Nissan Leaf. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, well, I think the first thing that I notice is the pretty high seating position you have. That is certainly one area where they tried to make this feel like a crossover, because you have a seating position where, like, this is in the lowest setting and the dashboard is very low, and I just feel like I'm kind of almost sitting on top of the car instead of in it in a way. And I think for, you know, average American buyers, that's the right move, but it just at first was just a little bit odd. I'm like, wow, like I feel like I'm sitting up higher than I'd like, but yeah, that's the only thing to note. Now, headroom up front here should still be totally fine. I would definitely try that on for size. Other things here though, I've really appreciated the visibility in the Leaf this week. You have a really just airy cabin. You have a pretty thin A-pillar where it really drops away very nicely out of your view. So it's very easy to see around. You know, the mirrors are actually pretty nicely sized as far as, you know, seeing out. View out of the back is okay. You know, it's your typical sporty, coupey hatchback kind of view there. Not as big as some, you know, normal SUVs, but still totally fine. And again, here in the Platinum, you get the 360 camera, which will certainly help with any visibility stuff. And of course, you have a backup camera as standard. Other things here. So I think I'm very happy that Nissan seems to have improved their tuning of throttle and brake response. So I complained about in the Aria, the brake pedal felt kind of weird with the way they were doing the regen, and it wasn't consistent. In this, it's been consistent all week. And so I think they've really fixed that, and I'm very happy to see that. And so throttle response, very nice and responsive, has, you know, a good electric response like you're expecting, where it's, you know, pretty zippy the second you step onto the gas there, but it's not overboard, and, you know, has a nice feel to it. Now there is the drive modes where that can change. So if you want it more relaxed, you can go into the eco mode. If you want to have it more responsive, you can go into the sport mode. But it's all really well done. But brakes also it's a very light brake pedal feel. So you have to be a little delicate with your inputs, because if you just put a lot of muscle into it, you're going to get a pretty aggressive response. But it's very easy to be smooth with still, and I really like that. These regen paddles also are certainly nice. You do have an E-step mode, which will give you a more aggressive regen, but there is no one pedal mode, as it's important to note. But the paddles are certainly nice. If you're coasting down a long hill, it will ramp up with the paddles there. It also does seem to have some intelligent regen, where it will just ramp up on its own sometimes. I haven't quite figured out exactly what triggers that, but it does seem to kind of have a little bit of a mind of its own sometimes with the regen, but it hasn't annoyed me this week. But anyway, I've put it up into the sport mode here. Let's turn down onto this back road and see how the Leaf accelerates. Here we go. It gets up and goes very nicely, actually. It feels faster than the numbers suggest, I will certainly say that. So all Leafs are front-wheel drive with a front motor, and they do a total horsepower of 214 horsepower, 261 pound-feet of torque, and that'll give you a 0 to 60 time, according to Nissan, in 7.5 seconds. But Carbuzz actually managed to get a 6.6 second 0 to 60 time. I think Car and Driver got 6.9. So, I think that's more of an accurate representation of what you will actually feel. 7.5 feels a little slower. This feels better than that for sure. And being electric, again, means it's instant response. So unlike a gas engine where, you're getting kind of, up to speed and it's slow for the first 30 miles per hour or so, with this, it's, instantly quick from the second you put your foot down. Full power, full response, no waiting for a transmission to make up its mind or anything. It's really, the drivability of EVs is just superior in every way as far as just doing what you want it to do. Also, sport mode does give you a little bit of a heavier steering feel, which we'll talk about whenever we are on the tighter back road here in a second. But yeah, coming up to a stop here, nice and easy as far as the brake response. And also, I have noticed this week, because of how punchy this thing is off the line, that I did find myself spinning the tires occasionally, and traction control was definitely intervening. I mean, you can have that in any front-wheel drive car, but especially in EV, this front-wheel drive, it's very eager to spin those tires. So just be sure that you're in the eco mode if you are in bad weather or something, so you don't have that aggressive throttle response and kind of dulls that stuff to help give you the traction you're looking for, hopefully. But it would be nice to have an all-wheel drive Leaf. Doesn't seem like that's in the cards, at least for now. And that is something where some of the other competitors do have an edge, because they do offer that and this does not. But we're on this little bit of a rougher road that usually generates some more road noise, and you actually don't hear much. I've been very impressed with how quiet this is this week. It's actually quieter than the average, like, economy cars, that's for sure. But kind of some corners here I always take. We'll see how this thing handles. And that's another area where I'm very impressed with this. Now, I think the biggest letdown is the tires. So if you hop into one of these and you do happen to drive with some aggression or some speed around corners, you may be let down by the tires. And I, this week, have noticed, the tires could use more grip. Now, they've obviously gone with Hypermile kind of tires. They're these Bridgestone all season. They're a sport all season, supposedly, but it's set up to give you, the best range possible. That's really the focus. And again, there's no reason trying to turn this into a sports car. Most people are not going to appreciate that. They want the range. And so, again, I think they made the right choice with that. But just know that, you don't have a ton of grip out of these tires here. But otherwise, handling is very good. So these are quite a bit heavier, though, compared to the old Leaf, because of the bigger battery you get here in these. These are over 400 pounds heavier. So, you know, it's going to feel weightier if you're coming out of the old Leaf for sure. But you do have a more sophisticated suspension. So you used to have a torsion beam in the last generation Leaf. Now you have a multi-link independent rear suspension. So they say that allowed them to fine-tune the handling and the ride quality also in these a little bit better. And I will say, as far as ride quality goes, these certainly do ride very nice. Now, I will admit I've never actually driven the last generation Leaf, so I can't compare ride quality between the two, but what I can say is that this is very smooth. It certainly, again, feels better than the average economy car. And I mean, even, you know, other stuff that's, you know, $30,000 to $40,000, I'd say this actually rides a little bit nicer. And I think they focus on, again, making it a softer kind of you know, ride quality, which, you know, hurts you a little bit in handling, but for, you know, the 95% of your driving where you're not, you know, carving up a back road, it's going to be very nice. You know, it's super comfortable, and I've been very impressed with that this week, just how comfy this thing is to drive. The steering is, you know, totally fine. You don't get a ton of feel through it, but I like, you know, the ratio. It's, you know, pretty nice and quick. And in sport mode here, it's got some nice weight to it, but we'll even, you know, pop out of sport and go into the standard mode. There's also a personal mode, by the way, if you want to have, for example, heavy steering or quicker throttle, but you want to have the other thing not be aggressive. You know, it's nice to give you that customization as well. But in the normal mode here, it's just nice and easy. Again, the main thing about this vehicle is being a comfy commuter cruiser, and it nails that. I think it absolutely nails all the regular driving tasks just so well. I mean, you know, you still do hear a little bit of road noise, so it's not like it's, you know, insanely quiet, but obviously you have no engine noise, so you're going to have a lot less noise there. But as far as the battery info, that's obviously very important here in these, and that is a huge improvement over the last Leaf. So we run a 75 kilowatt hour battery here in all of these Plus versions. Later on, I think sometime in 2026, there will be a smaller 52 kilowatt hour battery, which only does 210 miles of range. Here with this 75 kilowatt hour pack, in the Platinum here with these large wheels, we're going to go down to 259 miles of range is the lowest worst case range scenario. If you go for the SV with its slightly smaller wheels, you're going to go up to 288 miles of range. And then if you go for the base trim, actually, that's going to be the range champ with 303 miles of range, which is fantastic. Better than like the new Bolt that's coming. That's only going to do 255 miles of range. And anything else that has 300 miles of range is going to be more expensive by at least $5,000. So really, you know, well positioned there by Nissan with the way they set that up. Another nice improvement is the charge speed. So now these charge at 150 kilowatts for the DC fast charge speed. Now, if you go for that smaller battery again in 2026, then you'll go down to only 105 miles or 105 kilowatt fast charge rate. So that's going to be, you know, clearly just the one that's for primarily not road tripping, obviously with a lower range and everything. And it's nice they're going to be offering that, because that's going to bring the cost down even lower, I think. But if, you know, you're obviously wanting to have more road trip capability, definitely going to go for this Plus with the bigger battery and the faster charging. Also, whenever you go to, you know, any kind of level 2 charger, or, you know, at home if you have level 2, there you'll be getting about a 12-hour recharge time from a completely dead battery to 100%. And it's a 7.2 kilowatt onboard charger here for these. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you have an NACS port there on the passenger side for DC fast charging. So you're going to need an adapter if you want to use CCS chargers for fast charging, because again, it's only a J1772, does not have the CCS component here on the driver's side. You know, so it's an interesting way they set that up. And again, I wish that there was the ability to do both CCS and NACS, but nothing an adapter can't fix there on the NACS port. But otherwise, now we're out on the highway. I'm going to put the Pro Pilot Assist on, which is actually standard, which is very impressive. This is still a hands-on system with Pro Pilot Assist, but it's something where they have been working on, you know, getting closer to getting it hands-free. And in the Nissan Rogue and in the Armada, it does do very limited hands-off driving, but here in this, it is still hands-on, I believe. And you know, it's certainly nice to have, though. Nissan does a really good job with their Pro Pilot Assist, especially the hands-on version. The hands-off one still is a little rough, but the hands-on one here is, you know, done reliable assistance all week, and, you know, does a really good job of staying centered in its lane, and doesn't ping pong or anything. and just, yeah, I've been very happy with Nissan's ProPilot Assist system, and the fact that that's standard is really great. That means adaptive cruise control is standard, the lane keep assist is standard, everything is standard here in these. That includes also blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, park sensors are standard. The automatic emergency braking, of course, is standard, but everything is standard. And that is also commendable for a car that, again, for an EV that starts at $31,500, to have all that safety tech is impressive, because a lot, again, the others, they're gonna, put that into a higher package to get to that low price point. The fact that we got to this low price point with the Leaf while having it be loaded with stuff. I mean, I would have even forgiven them for not having adaptive cruise standard, but they do. They have all this stuff as standard, and it's really just, again, an impressive feat. And it also makes it way easier to go buy one of these, because you just know that everything is standard. You don't have to check any option boxes or safety packages or anything like that. And yeah, it's just very impressive. Now, also out on the highway here, this highway, it's a little wet here today, so you're going to hear a little bit more road noise probably than normal, but it's, still just a very nice highway cruiser here. A little bit of wind noise too as well, but honestly, it's very quiet. And again, quieter than an average economy car for sure. A Nissan Kicks would be louder inside than this is. And again, not having any powertrain noise certainly helps as well. And then once you turn on, especially in the Platinums here, this Bose system with these headrest speakers putting surround sounds straight into your ears pretty much, you're not going to have any complaints as far as any outside noises for sure. Yeah, and on the highway here, the ride's very nice and comfy still, not too busy or anything, even with this shorter wheelbase. It's a very nice cruise. I've just been so impressed. Put over 100 miles on this thing already this week, and I've just been so impressed with living with it, driving it around. It's just a very nice companion for all your daily errands and just living your life. Now, as far as the efficiency here in the Leaf, these are rated at, I believe, 3.03 miles per kilowatt hour as far as the efficiency goes. Although the math, that was what the window sticker said, but according to the math, that wouldn't work out to the range this is rated at. But anyway, with my driving here, which was mostly suburban around town, a little bit of highway driving mixed in there, but not a lot. My average has been 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. And it's important to note, I'm doing this review here in the middle of November, and it's been pretty chilly actually, and not ideal conditions for an EV, but because we have a heat pump as standard, by the way, also again really driving home the value of that base one. Standard heat pump means that you won't have quite as much range loss in the winter time. So I think that's part of why even in the winter here I'm still seeing 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, and I think you could certainly do much better again in the summer for sure. There's also a battery heater that is an option. This one does have it. I think it's about $300, and that is what allows you to do the battery preconditioning to give you those peak charge rates. You don't have to have that, but it's certainly nice to have. And it's also worth noting that you do have a liquid cooled battery, so you won't have the battery degradation that you got in the last generation Leaf. This battery is warranted for 8 years and 100,000 miles, but should last again even well beyond that, just because of that liquid cooling. As we've seen in many other EVs, they can go hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles on the original battery with no issues and no severe degradation. So you should have a very nice long life, and certainly an improvement over the last generation Leaf. And that also should help with depreciation, because those old Leafs really get hit with hard depreciation because of how fast that battery degrades. And so I'm hoping that these ones will hold their value better because of that liquid cooled battery for sure. But the last thing to mention here really is the pricing and how this compares to the competition. So let's get into that. So the 2026 Leaf starts at $31,485 and is already very well equipped even at that base price. If you'd like the heated leatherette seats, the wireless phone charging, and the bigger screens, the SV is still a pretty low $35,725, and then this fully loaded Platinum has an as-tested price of $41,930. And if you're looking to get the best price possible on a Leaf or any vehicle for that matter, you're definitely going to want to head over to Maranmotoring.com. There you'll go to the new car quotes page where you can get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected with a local dealer so that you can check out the Leaf for yourself and see what you think about it. So there's going to be a link in the description as well as one in a pinned comment to take you straight to that site and get you all that info. Now, as far as how the Leaf compares to its competition, as of right now, there's really no other competitors that can actually match it. The 2027 Chevy Bolt that arrives in early 2026 is probably the most comparable and will start a couple $1,000s lower, which is significant for this price point. But the compromise is a slightly lower range of 255 miles, smaller screens, and what appears to be a less plush interior than the Leaf. If you can live with those compromises, it'll be hard to beat the Bolt, but you will have to live without Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, since GM has insisted on getting rid of that in their EVs. If you're looking at higher trims of the Leaf, you will start to find a few more competitors. One interesting one that's often forgotten is the Volvo EX30. It's only $39,500 surprisingly for one that's comparable to this Platinum Leaf, but that base trim won't have adaptive cruise control or a 360 camera, but it does have things like heated seats and a heated steering wheel. There's also only one screen for everything, and it's a little tighter in the back seat. But if you want a slightly more upmarket small EV, it could be a great choice, as long as you don't mind it being rear-wheel drive, since the all-wheel drive version is much more expensive and a lot faster. It's also worth noting that at the time of filming, if you're up for a sedan and you don't have a problem with Tesla, a Model 3 starts under $39,000 currently and does give you more space, power, and range, plus faster charging. All the other competitors to the Leaf are the next class up in size and in price, all costing about $5,000 more comparably equipped. I won't cover the roughly dozen others in that class, but I will say that if you're watching this in the first couple months of me posting this, you may be able to pick up one of the last remaining Nissan Arias for a nice discount that could make pricing close to Leaf. And of course, all EVs currently have incentives and discounts that change monthly, so it's hard to compare just MSRPs. You might be able to get a better deal on one versus the other depending on the time of year, where you are, and a variety of other factors. If you'd like help navigating all of this, I also do one-on-one car advice calls now to help you find the car that's the right pick for you at the right price. You can book a call on my website. But yeah, so overall, I'm really impressed with the Leaf here. I like it a lot. It's been a really nice companion to live with for the week here. And again, I think they just knocked it out of the park with the pricing. It really just comes down to, again, which trim you want. And I think the lower trims are certainly a phenomenal value. Once you get to these upper ones, you know, there's some other tempting options close to this price, but I think this definitely just beats everyone on price currently, and I think that we desperately need more affordable EVs and not penalty boxes, but you know, really nice stuff. And again, as long as you can live with the backseat space and the cargo space, I think this is, you know, phenomenal option. I love that these are available, and I can't wait to see even how low the price gets with that, you know, base version here next year. But in the meantime, absolutely love this. I love the fun of it. I love the fun colors, the cool interior, again, top-notch everything. Just so well done. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2026 Leaf. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Nissan for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and be sure to check out my reviews on the competitors or on the Kicks if you're interested in, you know, something that's gas powered with a little more space. Definitely check that out. Another excellent product here from Nissan. And yeah, but thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.